Well, hello there. Look who we have here. We got Jon Ray and Camille Reid. Camille is the programs manager and my co-host and my good friend, and picks up all the stuff that's falling off the wagon behind all the shit that I do. Glad you're here, Camille.
Thanks, Bob.
And Jon Ray, John is his first name, Ray is his last name, but he's one of those guys that just everybody calls him Jon Ray because it just sounds so cool. And maybe we'll hear more about that. But John is a cool dude with just a vibrant energy and great recovery, and he is our guest today. Hey, Jon Ray.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dr. Bob.
So welcome everybody to the recovery crew here at Deep Waters. Before we get launched here, let's have Camille say a little bit about what's going on here at Deep Waters.
Yeah, Deep Waters Recovery. Here we are an advanced recovery and healing experience for men and women. We have the Deep Waters Intensive, or the DWI, which is a 3-day transformational trauma resolution experience that integrates psychodrama, bioenergetics, and rituals of empowerment. We also have our upcoming Experiential Facilitators Training, or the EFT, which is an opportunity for anyone who works with others to do their own inner work and learn action tools that they can use in groups. We're also offering a certification track that includes completion of 4 modules to become a certified experiential facilitator. You can find all the upcoming event information on our website at deepwatersrecovery.com. We also have an outpatient program where individuals can work with Dr. Beare and his colleagues in groups, individual, couples, and family sessions. If you want to reach out to us and think about bringing the sustainable trauma resolution into your facility, you can email us at admin, ADMIN, at deepwatersrecovery.com. We have our weekly blogs, which come out on Mondays. This podcast comes out on Fridays. You can like, share, follow, subscribe to all of our social media channels at Deep Waters Recovery and the Recovery Crew podcast. And then you can see Dr. Bob on TikTok as the recovery and trauma guy, wise ass therapy solutions.
That's right. You can get offended if you like being offended with your healing work.
Yeah.
It's even slightly too offensive for Jon Ray. Jon Ray is also helping the Deep Waters Recovery bring all of our stuff into, I'll let him talk more about it, but bringing it online in a way that is really accessible. And some of my TikTok videos are a little, shut the fuck up, that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how he's going to find a way to get it out to the world, but we'll see. So go ahead.
We just got to bring that censorship bleep in a little bit more often.
Okay, yeah. But I need those words. I need those words to emphasize. All right. So I'm going to do, I'm going to read this bio rather than just pick stuff out of it. So Jon Ray is a heart-centered copywriter and digital marketing consultant for high-level executives and awakening entrepreneurs. I'll also say on the side, in the addiction industry and the mental health industry, he's an emerging dude that everybody knows about and seems to be hiring him so much that I can't get a hold of him sometimes. But actually, he's very accessible, more than I would ever expect. But okay, he teaches a simple practice: feel your feelings, as a way to unlock creative potential and show up as a more powerful and profitable leader. He likes to use the word "let's make money," which you don't hear much in the healing world. It's like we're only supposed to just help people heal. It's okay to make money, right, John?
Oh yeah.
It's okay to have to have a little prosperity. I don't have to apologize for that. All right. So John has used these techniques to lead large teams at Google in the real estate space, and now running his digital marketing agency, Awakening Entrepreneur. As a recovering alcoholic and addict, he points towards emotional processing as the primary way to release, quote, white knuckle sobriety, close quote, and truly step into a place of peaceful expansion.
All right.
It was also an example of your good writing skills.
Oh, thank you.
We're so glad you're here, Jon Ray. Such a juicy character that I've got, and you've supported my recovery and my bringing my vision to the world so much. This is your time to tell your story. What was it like? What happened? What's it like now? and maybe we'll interrupt you a few times when we get interested in what's going on, and we'll, so glad you're here. The stage is yours, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And, I think one of the reasons that I resonate with you so much, Dr. Bob, is because we both are, I think, exploring a little bit of the bleeding edge of our industry and always trying to push the envelope a little bit. And that's kind of where my story starts. I was a rebellious kid. I was raging against the machine, from 14 on. And my story kind of starts with me, sneaking into my parents' or my friend's parents' liquor cabinets around the age of 14, and really feeling like an adult drinking liquor, and I had so many adults as I was in high school and junior high who were always trying to get me to fall in line. I was always trying to figure out how I could do something differently. I wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted to break all the rules. I wanted to showcase that most of the rules were stupid and unnecessary. And one of my favorite things to do as a teenager was to piss adults off. And I found out pretty quickly that if you snuck into their liquor cabinet and got caught, that was the best way to piss off an adult. So that kind of continued on through high school partying and what everybody does. I was a pretty high functioning alcoholic and always was. And my parents early on put me into therapy. And so every week I had to go to a therapist and talk about my alcoholism and how bad it was. And, for me at the time, I thought that I was just messing around with my friends. And so I used to use these therapy sessions as a way to come up with these elaborate lies about my life and what was going on and what my parents were doing to me. And so my first experience of therapy was inventing stories about why I was drinking and the things that were happening in my life. And I had so much fun kind of messing with this therapist, God bless her, because she was I later on in life read her book and it was actually pretty good. But I was always interested in things that have power over people. And so when I was in high school, the internet was just coming out, and my friend Ryan and I were early computer programmers, and we kind of invented a social network before that was a thing for our high school, and it gave us this really interesting opportunity to, one, throw massive parties all the time, because it was the first time that we could organize an entire student body using something like the internet,
right? Where the adults couldn't listen in, right?
Exactly. And so I got expelled from school more times than anybody can count, and I developed this resentment, really, is what it was, for authority in general, because no one was fostering the talents that I felt I was creating, and instead everybody kind of just threw their arms up in the air and was wondering why the hell I was the way I was, and so alcohol became this kind of driving force that I used to showcase to every adult in my world that they could not control me. Yeah. And it worked really well.
It loosens the wheels. If you were a little bit angry and thinking about exploding something, the brain, if you're using all of your brain cells, you won't explode it. But if I can medicate those brain cells, then exploding it just doesn't seem like, it's not that big a risk.
Right. And so I constantly was blowing up my life and my parents' life and the lives of the adults around me, and really made that a habit for the next 10 years.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny now, but there's also pain in there, right? I mean, those explosions must have created some nice shit for you to have to clean up later.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing and the thing that I've been cleaning up ever since is a feeling of not feeling understood, or feeling like if I don't show up in a way that's perfect, that, you know, somebody's gonna tell me that I'm bad, or take away the thing that I built.
That's right. That's
Because
right. And there's a thing in our culture that is like, you know, with folks like the three of us. The three of us are creatives first. Really. I mean, it's like I have a fire underneath me, and I know you two. We both have creative fires, which is a little preview of another podcast that we're going to do. But you know, and the culture isn't really set up for us. And they're going to try. My dad used to do this little thing with his hand. Anybody watching on YouTube can see it. That means you just calm down, mister. You just calm down.
Right.
And I think
Well,
the culture has that.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody's told me I'm talking too loud.
Oh, yeah.
But what, you know, the culture and the educational system doesn't know what to do with us. So they try to tamp us down. And what happens when you tamp energy down?
Right.
Hydraulics and pneumatics. Look at the right. So,
and John, I'm sure like your parents, like maybe they thought like, oh, this is just like a phase.
Well,
that he's going through, that it's like lasting a little too long, but like,
yeah, I mean, my parents have been incredibly supportive of me in many aspects of my life, and I have a great relationship with them now. But back in high school, you know, we would have literal screaming matches where my mom and I would lose our voices. We were yelling at each other so loud, and you know, I think a big part of it was that we also, so there was a lot of alcohol usage on my part and the part of my friends. I mean, I was on a regular weekend basis getting dumped in my parents' backyard on the trampoline, just completely blackout drunk. And so, of course, that's scary for a parent. You know, they were a part of a you know, most of their friends were in the church, you know, the Christian church, and none of their kids were acting out. They were all good little preacher kids. And so they didn't really know what to do with me. And I was a part of the church youth group too, but I was like the rebel kid. I was the one that got all the kids to try the the communion wine, or my first job. But my first job was as a janitor at my Baptist church, and we used to smoke pot in the baptismal. So, so you know, I had this kind of rage and resentment that I was seeing this kind of new thing, which was the internet, that was developing into something, and no one was honoring my exploration of it. You know, in fact, my computer was being taken away from me. The school was calling the FBI on me. And so that put me into this mode of, I'm just going to burn it all to the ground. And so I started drinking more and more. And when I left home, you know, I got into drugs and really got to the place where it was difficult for me to work a regular 9-to-5 job. You know, my parents had given me money to college. I was pretending to go to college, but instead got my real estate license. And so I was a liar. You know, one of the things that becomes apparent, or at least it was apparent in my alcoholism, was how willing I was to just lie about everything. Yeah. And so I lied about going to college. I lied about what my career was. And then as I was developing a career in real estate, I was lying to my employers about what I was doing every single night, which was partying until 4 a.m. And eventually I couldn't maintain a job because I was so hungover every morning. Yeah. And I basically invented a career where I became a music video producer. And I was like, you know what I should do is just work with a bunch of other people who are drinking and doing drugs. and so for many years, five or 6 years, you know, my brother and I just, and the people that worked at our production company, we just drank every night, you know, cheap, gross boxed wine, got blackout drunk, filmed bands that, you know, and did rock documentaries, and then got to sleep until 2 p.m. And then we would wake up and do it all over again.
Yep, and had some success, right? So there's plenty of stories about artists who drank through their entire career and created this amazing shit, right? The only thing that is always curious to me, and it's because I'm a creative and I had some success in the theater while I was doing that crazy shit. But I remember I might have had little moments of happiness peppered in there, but for the most part, it was just trying to beat back the misery enough to bring the creativity forward. You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Well, for me, it was a constant struggle of having to avoid all of that discomfort and convince myself that what I was doing was the thing that I actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then as a of a liar, a pathogenic liar, I was constantly in a position of having to convince the people that we were working with that we were doing the right thing. And it just became this self-fulfilling prophecy that we were the stereotype that we had kind of built for ourselves of these kind of burnout artists that were having success, and to some degree that was talent, and to some degree it was that there was a luck to it. I think one of the reasons that a lot of artists have a story where they're drinking through their whole thing is that it does lower a lot of the pressure and noise, and there's a vibrational component to how some of these opportunities show up and what you're able to see, like drugs reduces all of that resistance so that you can actually be open to it.
That is so good. That is such a good catch right there. It's like that part of me that's got the three of us have done some personal deep work around this low self. Everybody steps to the carpet at Deep Waters Intensives with some version of I'm not good enough, right? We all carry this chatter in some version, right? Alcohol and drugs beat that shit down long enough for me to like function until it didn't work anymore. But the other thing related to this is one of my mentors always said, if I'm not creating, I'm going to be destroying. Us creatives are going to do something with that energy. And some good creativity might be splattering, but I'm doing it on a basis of lying and cheating and stealing. And I'm using my creativity in a particular way. Right. So,
right. Well, and it pigeonholes you when you get into that mode of having to lie, cheat, and steal your way through life, which was definitely the point that I was at. You can have a certain degree of success, but it completely limits your ability to step into bigger and bigger opportunities, because at some point there has to be some level of integrity, even if it's just integrity of showing up and doing anything. And I think that I was falling into such a low self-esteem place because I knew I was doing the wrong things. And also through this whole thing, my body was so efficient at showing me that I was on the wrong path, because I was a chronic bedwetter when I would be drinking. And so in addition to being, a drunk and a womanizer, I've, peed on so many different couches and beds, and it was always kind of that, like a wake-up call where my body was saying, you are literally pissing your life away. And it was actually really interesting because that my body doing that when I would get too drunk actually allowed me to have the experience of feeling the embarrassment of what I was doing more than I ever could have if I had just been doing the drinking. It was easy for me to block out the stuff that I had basically blacked out from drinking anyway, but I couldn't black out kind of some of the aftermath that my body had created when I had to explain why I had urinated on somebody's couch. And so that was the first experience of actually having to feel an emotion that I couldn't hide from anymore.
Yeah, the body will tell the truth, right? We always say the mind will lie to us, but the body will always tell the truth. Just for example, blushing, right? I don't want anybody to know I'm having shame, but the body will say, hey, I'm having shame now.
Yeah.
That's what blushing is. And you know, when we're using, one of the things about drugs and alcohol, it takes quite a while for it to really show up. Whereas my food addiction is like showing. It's one of the things that keeps us from until the body, for a lot of people, they get into recovery when the body starts breaking down and starts yelling
Mhm.
loud enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I really do believe that all physical symptoms are pointing to an emotional trauma or issue that's ready to be released. And the physical manifestation is just the signal that's saying, hey, there's something at a more subtle level that you need to pay attention to. And I've around this time I was starting to get into a bunch of different woo-woo texts, and I found Louise Hay's work. She has a book called Heal Your Body, and it's all about kind of the emotional root of certain things, and wetting the bed. The emotional root of that is being pissed off, being angry at your parents, being angry at authority, and of course that matched to a T. And so the turning point of wanting to, so I, through all of that, I had some issues where I had some run-ins with the law and typical rock star stuff, and ending up in jail for public intoxication. I had AA court assigned to me, and I, like I did with therapy when I was 15, I just pretended to go through AA. I had to write a whole essay on what AA meant to me and what I learned and what my 90 and 90 meant. And I wrote a great essay. The judge was so happy with what I had written. And in my head the whole time, I was still of the mindset that authority is so stupid. This judge is so stupid that he can't see that I don't mean any of this.
I got to get a look at that. It's forward. Camille, get him to forward that. We'll
Yeah, you got
word for word.
You basically got to be the ultimate like grown-up rebellious teen. You were like, how long can I pull this off? And like, I'm sure every time you got away with it and nobody like realized that you were just bullshitting it, it made you high.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were just getting a little like, confirmation bias.
Well, absolutely. And really, it didn't start to click with me until I started to have some more serious romantic relationships. And that's where that's where my drinking showed up as being a problem for someone else. I had never seen it as anything other than my own situation. And I at that time was so selfishly, egotistically focused on me that I wasn't aware of any of the ripple effect that was coming from my behavior. And as I got into relationship with women who I really cared about, that's when, God bless them, they provided me with a mirror. I was able to see my own behavior through their eyes, and it started to make me realize that maybe I needed to tamper this down, or I needed to, back then it was like I need to control it in a way where it doesn't hurt somebody, but I wasn't going to quit. I just needed to control it.
And I had some of that in the early days of my recovery too. That's where the pain was. Of course, my parents, I lied, cheated and steal, and I've done amends there. I got to do amends with both of them before they died, but they put up with my shit for many decades.
Yeah.
But they're always going to be there though, right? But when it was a romance situation, and actually it's actually pretty selfish too. It's like, man, I better do something here, or I'm going to lose this person that I actually would like to be with.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't put up with my shit as much as my family has.
Yeah. And of course, I was hard-headed enough that I lost several really great relationships over that. And each time, the grief of losing that relationship was enough to give me a little bit more information about what my behavior was doing, a little bit more awareness. Yep. And it really was that grief that started to open up something new inside of me. And was studying kind of like occult practices and like being able to have psychic prescience and all of this stuff. I was just looking for, okay, I can't control my life at this level. Maybe there's like a bigger level that I need to control it at. And so that's where my head went, was I just must not have found the right control mechanism.
Right. Not surrender wasn't on the list, but controlling a larger universe.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty common theme, like for anybody who right before they decide like, okay, I should probably stop drinking and using. It's like, okay, to what level can I start controlling this and be on top of everything? Like it's our last grasping for straws, I think.
Yeah. And, I think because my experience with AA had been court ordered and I hadn't taken any of it seriously, I then kept that at arm's length really for the rest of, for the next 10 years or so. And one of the beautiful, things that has happened in my life is I met a woman who's now my life partner, but I met her many years ago before that, and she had worked the steps and was sober and was a happy person and had all her shit together and was so beautiful. And I remember being so in awe of how she was able to show up in that way. And we were all I met her in an acting class when I was, doing film work. And I was always amazed at how much fun she could have, even though we were all being drunken idiots. She was just good at explaining what her story had been and how she had dealt with things. And really just saying that everybody has to have their own experience. And if you want to have a different story, it's available, but you don't have to have one. And this woman has and continues to be so patient with me. And my need to make everyone in my life wrong made me go down a much longer path than I think if I had just gone through the steps and actually taken them seriously. Because now when I look back on it, having done all of this other feelings-based work, the 12-step program is such a beautiful program, and it really is such an excellent way to have some of those feelings come to the surface, but because I had never seen it in that light of, oh, if I work the steps, it's an emotional experience. For me, it was all a mental process. It was a game of chess of how do I say that I'm doing this so that I can get what I want. And I ended up going on a very long path of kind of exploring a lot of different spiritual and emotional topics that spoke to me at the level of control, but ultimately gave me a recognition that surrender was where the most power lived. That there was an opportunity to turn my life over to something that I wasn't in control of, and I couldn't even do that, wholeheartedly. And so I had to phrase it as an experiment. I'm going to run an experiment. And the hypothesis is what it would happen if I say that I'm going to surrender to something bigger, then maybe some new insight will come to me. And that was kind of how I started to play with that idea of surrender. And around that time, I was also having an understanding of truth, my ability to speak truth, being able to, again, coming from this control background, I actually saw truth as a way to better control reality. I was like, oh, there's, in occultism, a lie is a very flimsy spell. You can't say something and not mean it and have that have any tangible effect on the energy of the universe. And so you had to be very intentional and truthful. And I just really latched on to that concept. And even though I threw most of the other occult stuff out the window, that concept of there being power in truth was really vibrant for me. And at a gut level, I just got that. And so I started to challenge myself to tell the truth. And whenever I told a lie, as quickly as possible, admitting to it. And but I hadn't even made that relationship yet. I had to find this on my own because I still wasn't at the place where I could recognize that somebody else may have already done it better than me. Have
anybody like explain to you like throughout this process, like, hey, Jon Ray, do you realize that you're doing something very similar to the steps just in your own way? But that's how you have to do it too. It's your own way.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting.
Here's the opening part of how it works. Chapter 5. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping, developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty.
And that was it for me. And I took the hard route to get to it, but instead of it being an intellectual concept, like the first time that I had read the handbook and written my essay for that judge, it was experiential and it was my own experience. And so I was really able to root into it in a way that I never had when it was just an intellectual concept. And the more that I experimented with that, the more I realized that truth stung not only the people that I was saying it to, because I still wasn't great. So sometimes I thought that you were supposed to, just say whatever was on your mind, and that meant that you were telling the truth. But really, what I began to realize was that truth was kind of speaking whatever was happening in my body into the room. And so I started to say, you know what, I'm going to speak my feelings into the room. And this was something that I think was somewhat born out of nonviolent communication. This idea that I say what I feel and nobody can argue with how I feel.
That's right.
And that provides me with a level of feedback on whether that feeling is appropriate or if they maybe appropriate's not the right word, but what the context of that feeling is. Is it something from my past, or is it something that's actually happening in the moment?
Well, there's a lot. You've just said a lot right there. When I speak my emotional truth, really, you might not like it. It might trigger the shit out of you, but you can't argue with the fact that I'm angry. Well,
yes.
Go ahead and argue with it. Let's have a little argument about. There's nothing to argue. I'm angry, right? And I'm feeling it right here, or I'm sad, or I'm scared. Those are the three. Those are the three biggies right there. It's like you can't argue with this chunk of fear in my chest. It is.
Yes.
Right. So that's a really big piece. Now, there's one thing about this, though. I told the truth a lot when I was drinking to the bartender. I'm fucking angry at that guy, and I lost her, and holy shit, I am so fucking scared. Give me another drink. Right. So what's happening there is I'm saying the truth, but it's not what did you say? It poked me. It hit me. Yeah. It doesn't hit because here's what's happening. Those deep emotions are right down next to the hardened trauma in my body. And if I'm medicated, I'm not loosening the trauma. There's no transformation that can happen. That's why when people come into my practice, and I don't say it quite like this, but if you're using, there's not much I can do for you. Go out and get some more pain, come on back, and I'll help you get into a program so you can be working on your own chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so for me, the way that because it was interesting it was the first time really in a long time that I was connecting into some kind of a feeling in my body. I had created this kind of mental facsimile of my emotions where I was like, oh yeah, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry. But really it was all just an invention of my mind. I had so thoroughly blocked everything from here down off so that I wouldn't have to feel how miserable I was, that I wasn't actually having real feelings. And so the interesting thing that started to happen when I started to speak the truth was that then I had to feel how that truth felt in my body. And that almost became a new addiction for me because it was such an exhilarating experience to have all of these pockets of my nervous system start to come online that I was like, what else can I tell the truth about? And then also I was having an interesting experience in my meditations where I would just sit with myself and just energy and pockets of things would start to light up in my body. And so I would just sit with myself for hours and kind of watch as these new parts of me came back online. And I recognized that my interpretation was that, you know, there was a kind of mirror that reality was providing to me. And if I would just allow that mirror to slap me in the nervous system, it would immediately light up the areas of energy that were ready to release. And if I could lend attention to those areas that lit up in any given moment, if I gave that enough time, it would almost felt like it was burning itself out. And then there was this kind of exhilaration or clarity that came from it. And it was like that trauma was transmuting itself into a kind of creative potential.
Yep.
And that was an exciting concept for me. And so I started to go deeper into that. And it was something that in kind of the, you know, I had about a 7-year period where I was on again, off again with my sobriety. I would quit for 2 years, white knuckle it, all discipline. I'm just going to use my mental willpower to not drink, and I wouldn't drink, but I still wanted to drink. And so then eventually I would be like, I could probably be a 2 glasses of wine a night guy.
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
And so then I would try that, and of course 90 days into that, you know, I'm 6 bottles in, and I've completely ruined the illusion that I could ever be that guy.
Yeah, if it's anybody listening that's still in the trying to figure that out, you know, some of us actually go over that line. We used to be a cucumber, and then we drank and used whatever your thing is until you became a pickle. And we all try to go back to be a cucumber, and you have to go back and try it just to find out. And it's not a bad experiment.
Yeah. So I did that experiment, you know, 3 or 4 times and failed every single time. And each time gaining a little bit more awareness that I was going to have to make a bigger shift and getting more in tune with the concept of surrender through some of the meditation practices that I was doing. And eventually I decided that it was so interesting how much more energy I had throughout my day, how much less I had to sleep at night, how much more engaged I was mentally when I was feeling my feelings, when I was allowing my nervous system to kind of move energy in the way that it wanted to move it, instead of trying to push it all down and avoid it. That I decided that I wanted that to be my experience, that I liked the acuity of having that level of intuition and mental clarity more than I liked just getting obliterated every single night and distracting myself from it.
Yeah.
And of course, it was uncomfortable. It continues to be uncomfortable, but it's a temporary discomfort that opens up this greater awareness and perspective about my life at the macro level. And it, as an entrepreneur, it really taught me something about how you build a business, because in business, you have to do a bunch of things that are temporarily, short-term, very uncomfortable. They're new. You don't want to do them. They don't feel like the most exciting thing in the moment. But that taking that temporary thing and getting over that speed bump is what opens up, you know, this highway that allows you to go faster and faster and faster. And so what started to happen was that the shaky businesses, you know, to go biblical, that had been built on a ground of sand, kind of shifted into this more solid foundation where I was willing to do the difficult things that were required to build something that had some staying power, that would last. And a lot of that has been from recognizing that there's such a gift in sitting with that temporary discomfort, transmuting it. And it's almost like the temporary discomfort is pointing to the trapped energy that when released gives you the motivation to do the thing that you didn't want to do at first.
That is such a great paragraph right there. Somebody capture that, send it in a memo, and make the planet do that shit. All of us. And then war immediately stops. We are shooting rockets at each other across borders because we have discomfort that we're blaming on the outside world, right?
Yes.
And if I can just go to school, go to the Jon Ray Institute of Being with My Feelings, where I can just sit for, even like one of the things we do at Braveheart, the Braveheart experience, is a couple of different meditations where we find where the discomfort is in our body and make a choice to be with it, stay with it longer than you want to, and then okay. But I mean, it's, you know, for us, for those of us that have medicated ourselves, right? Anybody listening knows what your medication is, that you love to shoot up, ingest, do whatever it is when you're feeling uncomfortable, like a pie, or those of us that eat pizza rather than a piece of pizza. Right? Yeah. We all know what our drug of choice is, and whatever that is, we know that we are masters of extinguishing those feelings. Now, here's the other thing. Those of us that choose the recovery path to surrender are also masters of feeling. I mean, the folks in recovery are the people that I can cry with. I cried on the golf course today. Nobody cries on the golf. It's not allowed, is it? My buddy put a hand on me and said, "Bob, I love you. You're brilliant, just the way you are, pal. You don't have to." And I started crying on the 9th hole. What's happening here? You know what I mean?
We finally get to be aware of our energy and like make a choice. Like once we have that awareness, like we can choose to either lean into the shift of energy or keep pushing it down. And I think like for those of us who have gone through substance use, like we spent so much time pushing all of it down. And so once you do kind of make it to the other side of that, like you said, you start to lean into it and sit with that discomfort and, you know, try on a different thing and go sit in a different room and say, okay, this is what this feels like. All right, now what am I going to do with it? Like, I don't have to sit here and sit in my nonsense. Like I can change that energy and say, okay, what can I do with this now? And that's where the creative side comes in with it too. Like, how can I turn this into a positive?
Yeah. Well, and it's really hard to teach woo-woo concepts to you know, businessmen in a business world, but every business person understands having a gut feeling, and every business person has had an intuition about something that they needed to do, and when they followed that intuition, it opened them up to a whole new opportunity in the marketplace. And one of the things that has really been present in the work that I'm doing in just feeling my feelings is that intuition is an emotional thing. You know, I used to think that intuition was all mental. And so I was always, you know, doing a bunch of brain games on my phone and making sure that I was playing chess and trying to work out the muscle of my brain. But what I recognized is, you know, what some people call a psychic ability and other people just call a gut feeling or an intuition. It really is connected into our emotional faculties. You know, how well lubricated is that system, and the more well lubricated it is, the more that we can tap into that prescience. That's
right. And you are doing a little preview right now, because, you know, Jon Ray is just built around production, and unconsciously he is teeing you up, our audience, for next week's podcast, because we're going to focus on how to bring your gift forward into the world dynamically. And, you know, he's pointing right at, I've worked with executives a lot, pointing, the one thing you can get in the door of the the corporate world is the phrase emotional intelligence. That has found a way in there, right? And the main tool is knowing what you're feeling. And the way that I've gotten it in there is to bring the research with me, which shows more teams with more emotional intelligence will produce more. So that's the only way I can get these and here's the thing, most corporate environments are not a real safe place to be touchy-feely. So we're not pointing at guys or men and women and saying that they're somehow bad because they're not open. It's really not you got to create a sacred space, which is kind of tricky to do, but there's lots of places that are doing it, and we are on that. The world needs it. So
yeah.
Jon Ray, why don't you just give us a little picture of what's it? So you've told us what it was like, which was very juicy. I didn't know all that shit. He was in jail, Camille. I thought maybe, or at least he was close. And what happened, and what's it like now for you, Jon?
Well, it's beautiful. There's clarity is the word that comes to mind. I mean, there's such a deep level of clarity of what to do and how to show up and what's going to feel meaningful and an aliveness. I mean, one thing that I didn't give language to yet was how dead inside white knuckle sobriety was. And so for me, white knuckle sobriety was saying, I'm going to be sober, damn it. And almost treating alcohol as an authority figure that I was going to spite with my sobriety. And I was going to spite everybody who told me that I couldn't do it on my own. And that became the reason, the unhealthy reason to be sober was because everybody else told me I couldn't do it on my own. Yeah. And in order to do that, I didn't want to feel all the discomfort and misery that I had inside of me, all the grief and sadness, really. And so because of that, I just shut everything down. I went totally mental. I built these mental models of what my emotions are, and I was a robot. And the world felt gray and dead to me. And as I started to do the juicier work of feeling my feelings and letting the nervous system come back online, a vivid aliveness showed back up in my life. And I was able to connect with people at a deeper level and laugh deeper and cry. And I actually started to seek out, books and movies and music that brought tears to my eyes because it felt so good to have those systems back online.
Yeah.
And so, I guess a new aliveness is really what showed up when I was willing to do some of that temporarily uncomfortable work in order to open up a different landscape of how I was seeing and interacting with the world.
You are probably the best example of, man, we got to keep this guy sober because he'll be destroying shit. But the real example of vibrant, the opposite of that, the way you're living your life. I happen to know what you're up to, and the exact opposite of that destroying part of our addict. Right? It's the same energy, but bringing it toward growth is what you're up to. So, what a great example of. When we stop medicating and we get access to that deeper self, you're also a good example of our that thing that we say at Deep Waters all the time. Your greatest gift is in your wound, right? Yes. And if I'm continually medicating myself, I'm never going to get down into the wound to get the gold, right? It's a very alchemical idea that's been around a few thousand years. So we don't need to invent anything much new around that. And I didn't know you were a witch.
Oh yeah, I've got my hat, my broomstick over in the corner.
Yeah, I selfishly wanted you to expand on that. I was like, okay, shift the topic of the podcast. What does he know about the occult?
I can get very witchy. We could have a whole podcast on that. But I'll tell you that the major truth that I extracted from witchy occult stuff was that there are power in your words, and when you mean them, that power is invoked.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Can I get an amen? Oh, they don't say that over there. Okay. But I will say, I bet a lot of people in the occult have roots in hard ass sort of constrictive Christianity.
Oh yeah.
But don't get me started. All right. Nice. Thank you. Let's transition. Let's do something. Let's kind of end with a fun question.
Okay.
What do you say? All right. I am gonna choose this one. Best movie of what is the best movie of all time for you? And mine changes, but and why? Who wants to go first?
I'll pick it up.
right.
I think my favorite movie right now, and it does change, is a movie called Our Friend with Casey Affleck and what's his name, Jason Segel, and it's a beautiful story about a married couple and a friend and you know, their struggle with one of them going through a battle with cancer, and it's just such a deeply emotional and vivid representation that sometimes tragedy is the thing that wrecks us and sometimes tragedy is the thing that saves us.
Yeah.
And often it's both.
Yeah. Thank you. Camille?
I like that. I've never seen that. Now I'm curious about it.
I wrote it down.
Yeah. That's I like hearing about new movies. Okay, so my classic favorites are Forrest Gump and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I can watch them hundreds of times. I'll never get sick of them, and I feel every range of emotion during them. Like, I'll never stop crying during Forrest Gump. Never. Like, I don't think it doesn't matter what I'm doing, but that's like my emotional movie. And then a funnier movie that I saw recently is Jojo Rabbit, and I really liked it. And it's like somewhat offensive, and you know, there's like some like Nazi stuff going on, but it's like a comedy. It's hilarious. It's a great movie. So that's the emotional ones.
So my World War II movie is my favorite movie of all time is Life is Beautiful, Robert Benigni. It's an Italian, and it's about a dad that loves his kid so much that he creates a world to protect his kid from the horror of Nazi Germany. And there's also an incredible love story in there for that part of me that loves that shit. And then there's just the kind of what you said, Jon Ray, the searing opportunity for transformation that comes out of tragedy. So, all right. And then maybe, you know, tomorrow I'll go back to Caddyshack and The Jerk. But, you know, I have to.
Super Troopers is mine in that line of thinking.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, guys. This has been fun. It's good to hear more about your story, Jon Ray, and all the vibrant transformation in there. Wow. I just got fired up listening to it. Why don't you let folks know what you're up to in the world and how people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I work with heart-centered entrepreneurs that are looking to grow their business, attract the right customers, and the right customers is a big focus of mine. And so I run a digital marketing agency called Awaken Entrepreneur. It's awaken-entrepreneur.com. And we look at your business from a foundation of messaging and copywriting, and how are we going to communicate what you're doing in a way that resonates at a heart level with the type of person that is going to be a long-term customer for you. And so I really love giving language and strategy to people who are doing brilliant, purpose-driven things in the world. And I would love to jump on a call and give you some free value on you know, some thoughts about what you're doing in your business and maybe where you could look into other areas of expansion. So that's kind of what I'm up to.
Yeah, thank you. And he's really good at it. Anybody that cares what I think. All right. So it's awaken-entrepreneur.com, right? And if you want to send something to us, we'll get a hold of Jon Ray for you too. Camille, you want to just let people know a couple of the things that we're up to right now?
Yeah. And like Bob said, we have been, we work with Jon too, and he's gotten to come to some of our events. So it's a great relationship if you want to join in on that. So yeah, keep an eye out on our website at deepwatersrecovery.com for our next experiential facilitators training, and then also the Deep Waters Intensive. You can send us an email at admin@deepwatersrecovery.com, and then follow us on all of our social media pages.
Yeah.
And let me just brag on you guys. I mean, I wrote a little bit of copy for the experiential facilitators training before I went. I still am dealing with some ego things where I'm like, I probably know what it is. And I went to this event and it was a knockout. I mean, theatrical, beautiful, deep exploration of self. I really felt that Dr. Bob did a great job of leading that, but also the community that you're able to attract to those events was so supportive, and it felt like such a safe space to do some really deep work. And so for people that are interested in going to some of those icky, uncomfortable places that we were talking about and really opening up those emotional channels so that you can tap into a deeper level of potential and maybe offer that type of healing to someone else, these trainings really blew my socks off. So that's my brag on you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jon.
Thank you. It's a community. There's the experiential facilitator trainings. The Deep Waters Intensive is for anybody that's ready to really find that gold that's in it. It's built for it. It's we're glad to be able to offer that. And all right. So thank you guys. Thanks, Camille, for your good energy, and Jon Ray for your story. Jon Ray is going to be back next week, and the focus will be on how to bring that juicy truth to the world in a really good way. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Recovery Crew. You're in the deep waters now.